You love her voice, you love her looks. What Melissa loves are comic books. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back. Happy Mother's Day. That's when I'm recording this. Who knows when I'll get post-production done. More on that in a little bit. So let's talk about my new color. New color means new comics, right? And what more significant comic book can we talk about in 1937 than the launch of Detective Comics? I happen to have a physical copy here, thanks to DC Comics Millennial Reprint Series from 2000. It's a little dog-eared here in the corner, you can see, thanks to my interest in the period. And I was thinking that what I was going to do in today's episode was just to flip through pages of this and to show you each page. But then I did a run through of this and decided that it was going to actually be harder to do it that way. Everything that I'm seeing when I look at the screen in front of me is reversed, and then if I hold it up so it's easier for you to see, then I can't see what's going on. I only have the webcam that's built into my monitor, so it's not like I can just hold it over the book. So that wasn't going to work out, and I need to. We're gonna come back to talking to you. I need to talk to future me for a moment over here. So hi, future me. I'm awful sorry about this. First of all, you're beautiful. Secondly, I wanted to apologize for all the work that I'm going to be making you do here in post-production. I know it's a chore. You hate to do it. But it's going to be worth it in the end. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to turn out great. And I think that as you're getting closer to finishing this project, you're feeling good about it too. And again, love the new look. Okay, back to you people. Okay, let's talk about Detective Comics. Normally, when I do these videos, I may talk about a specific video. I may talk about a specific issue that represents a range of issues. And I'm going to do that again today. We're going to be just talking about some of the features in this first episode. And let's get started. First of all, a little bit of background here. By the end of 1936, Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson of National Comics is tired of feeling like he's behind the curve. He has seen Comics Magazine grow faster than his company, and on the backs of some of his own talent. He is sure that the secret of success is to pull the adult audience of pulp fiction into reading comic books. He just needs something big to grab their attention. This is the ad for Detective Comics that ran in the back of both of his comic books at the beginning of 1937. Sure, we can grimace today at the racist caricature here, and sure, we can also chuckle at the invention of the word swelligant to sell a comic book, but let's think about what Malcolm meant by that. It's elegant, a quality that he sees as attractive to adults, but it's also swell, a kid's word, right? It's a book that's also supposed to appeal to kids, so swelligant. What I really want you to notice is this bit here at the bottom. This is half actual size of cover. That's right. Malcolm is going to blow the competition away by putting out a comic book physically larger than anything currently on the market. But something happened to change that before this comic book ever hit the stands. Maybe Malcolm looked at the numbers and realized that it was going to cost too much to make a comic book like this, or something else happened. But now he's got a problem. He's already commissioned some stories to the larger size of this comic book. Now, if you rearranges the panels onto normal-sized pages, each feature is going to need much more page count. What we don't know today is when Malcolm realized that this wasn't really a problem, it was an opportunity. Remember, for most of the short history of comic books up to this point, comic books are anthologies with lots of variety and very short features, all 1 to 4 pages long. The Comics Magazine company has pushed that envelope, publishing full stories of up to a whopping 7 pages long. Squashed to regular size, Detective Comics is going to have features up to a whopping 13 pages long. The question is, or rather was, can a comic book story hold the reader's attention for 13 whole pages? No one has ever asked them to do this before. And the first page that I'm going to show you is from the inside front cover, or holding it up. This one here. It reads, the Major's third effort represented another breakthrough, a comic book whose very short stories would all be tied to the mystery genre so popular in the pulp magazines of the day. Whether or not it was really the first was a major topic that Hercule Poirot talked to you about here in episode 34. The following note says, overextended financially, he was able to launch Detective Comics only by taking on a pair of partners, his distributors, Harry Donenfeld and Jack Leibowitz. There will be consequences for this that we will come back to later. Now, the first feature is Speed Saunders and the River Patrol. The second panel reads, in every large city, there are the G-men. In every large seaport, there are G-men known as the Harbor Police. Speed Cyril Saunders is a special operative in a unit of the River Patrol. Dun, 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 dun. He's almost never known as Cyril after this point. Everyone just calls him Speed. The strip soon also loses the and the River Patrol part. The author figures out that stories all set on the same river are going to get repetitive in time, so Speed quickly becomes a less specialized field agent. Who the author is seems to be subject to debate. It has once been posited that E.C. Stoner was the author. Stoner was a commercial graphic artist who apparently co-created the Mr. Peanut mascot, and then either got his start in comic books in this very issue, or the following year in 1930, 2 years later in 1939, and sources don't agree on this. The other theory is that Craig Flessel, and I've talked about him a lot recently, both wrote and drew this feature. The Speed Saunders story is a short one, only 6 pages long, and begins with Speed sitting at home in a nice apartment, reading a book and smoking a pipe in a smoking jacket. You know, just what poor freelance comic book writers imagine cosmopolitan upper-class people did in their free time. He is summoned to the office to hear the story of a fisherman who pulled 4 dead Chinese men out of the bay. The harbor patrol are apparently keeping the story under wraps until Speed solves this. Speed does a thorough job checking for clues, asking informants, inspecting the bodies, and then spends weeks going undercover on the docks. His only clue is a suspicious schooner that never comes into port, and the rumor it has bootleggers on it. On the bottom of this page, he's just reached the schooner, and at the top of the next page, he's already captured on the schooner. This poor transition makes one wonder if panels were cut to shrink the page count on this story. Now, as we speed through this story, we learn that the leader on the schooner is called Captain Scum, a delightful sobriquet, and he's been smuggling Chinese people into the country, throwing sick ones overboard to die. The villain of the story seems to be Captain Scum, but it was really the Immigration Act of 1924 that restricted immigrants from Asia and drove these Chinese to such extremes to come into the country. But that's too nuanced for this story, and we can only see it now in hindsight. You may recall an assertion that I had once made that the first story in an anthology was always meant to be the strongest story, the one you thought was a real winner, so that might be a counter-argument against the notion that panels have been cut from this story. The art was either entirely by Craig Flessel, or at least inked by him, and I have also talked before about how much faith Malcolm had in Craig to sell comic books, particularly in terms of cover art, though that is not clearly on display here. You may recall some impressive Flessel covers from my top 10 comic book covers episode, but those started happening next month after this issue. This caricature is the work of assistant editor Vince Sullivan, who is up to this point drawing all the cover art. Now, the next feature inside is Cosmo the Phantom of Disguise. And if you're thinking Cosmo is supposed to be some science fiction-y detective, and this is cosmic and outer spacey, you're going to be hugely disappointed. Cosmo is short for Cosmopolitan. He's a dilettante detective with an international reputation for being a master of disguise, which is, of course, the more common way of saying the phrase Phantom of Disguise. And if you think that this whole thing that might betray some awkwardness with the English language, you might be onto something, because this is the work of Sven Elven, the Swedish immigrant artist that I've talked about in a previous episode. Sven was often doing the art on filler material, just meant to fill out the page count, literary adaptations that I've mentioned before, and this feature was probably intended as no exception. In this debut story, an international jewel thief with the weird name of Taro, Taro, and it's unclear if Sven knew taro is a vegetable. It's possible he was thinking taro, Tarot, and he just wasn't aware that, like tarot cards, the T is silent on it. Anyway, Taro sends a polite letter to this rich guy explaining the week he intends to steal his priceless pearl collection. The police don't think that they'll be able to stop Taro because no one ever has, so they call on Cosmo. On the week in question, the butler opens the back door to a fruit peddler. You would think the butler would know not to open the door for anyone during the week that his master is scheduled to be robbed, but Buckley is maybe hoping that there's going to be some taro in the basket. And Taro, this is obviously Taro, jumps Buckley and disguises himself as Buckley. Then he tries to poison the old guy, whose name happens to be Dillingwater. But, surprise, Dillingwater was actually Cosmo in disguise, and he gets the upper hand over Taro in a short fisticuff. The end. You may recall the cover said action-packed stories in color. But to be fair, it didn't say all the stories, and it seems even with the new financial backing, National still couldn't swing to get all the filler colorized, and that is what Brett Lawton is, filler, even though the concept of international detective who is also an explorer isn't it definitely an intriguing one. Brett starts out in Panama, but when his friend in Peru says he needs help, Brett literally runs to get on a ship to come help. There's an intriguing mystery here. Two miners have been found dead outside the mining camp. No trace that anyone was around them, each with a small hole in their flesh, but not a bullet wound. Brett works a little too meticulously for an action strip. He spends 3 days of story time interviewing the miners and other staff and rules them all out, thankfully just condensed into one page. Now, a third man dies before Brett even gets around to checking out the scene of the first two deaths, but before he gets there, he's observed by a suspicious man dressed like an Incan priest. And that's it. Part one of the serial story is already over. It's an intriguing setup, but it's all setup, and there's really nothing here to grab us. The art is by Craig Flessel again, but this seems like a real rush job for him compared to the attention that he'll soon put into his cover art. We have previously seen many examples of racist caricatures of Africans and Asians. Heck, I've already shown you the Asian caricature twice in this very episode, and we're not going to go back and look at this again, but I just wanted to point out that even Peruvians were not exempted from this and were depicted as primitive and superstitious. Much of the stories in this issue are kept to more comics magazine style length, 4 to 6 pages. Only 2 reach the unprecedented length of 13 pages, and I'm going to talk about one of them now. The Claws of the Red Dragon was a serial written by Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, and we know this not just because it's his style of story, but because he put his name on this one. He also credits Tom Hickey, one of his new favorite artists, who worked on this with him. Malcolm rarely ever signed his stories, so he must have felt like this one was really special. And according to comics.org, it was. This was actually based on one of Malcolm's earliest published stories, In the House of Fang Gao, that Street and Smith had published in Top Notch magazine back in 1933. If you recognize the name Fang Gao, it's probably because you watched my previous episode about More Fun Comics. He had recycled that name just as he's recycling that story now. This time, our hero is named Nelson. We'll later learn that his name is Bruce Nelson, but for this installment, he's just Nelson. We have no idea if this is his given name or his surname. And he's just a guy who's walking down the street. We have no idea what his full name is, his job, or any purpose in life that he has. He's walking down the street of San Francisco, and he just happens to see this restaurant, and he's interested in it because of the sign. He has noticed the number of claws the red dragon has, hence the title of this feature, and knows that this is a sacred symbol of the imperial rulers of China, which isn't a true thing, but it feels truthy. It is a thing that the number of claws a dragon has is important in Asian mythology. It reflects the country that the dragon is from, but 7 doesn't match any of the countries, and for China it would be 5 claws. So Nelson has some undisclosed connection to China himself as he wears the same symbol on his ring. Now, for 10 of these 10 of these 13 pages, I already said it was 13 pages. This story is just Nelson trying to get some food service. Hey, waiter, waiter, I'm hungry, stuff like that. And this could have been played for laughs, but the subtext here is that Nelson is trying to goad the staff into a confrontation. The suspense of will they or won't they hurt him starts to build as more and more menacing men start to gather around his table. And the stakes grow higher as this man and his beautiful daughter enter the restaurant. And there's another mystery here because the man is wearing an identical ring to Nelson's, though Nelson has no idea who this man is or what purpose he has here. And why is this man, the father, so comfortable here when everyone else clearly feels the tension in the atmosphere? Now, I know it can be difficult to look at how Asians were drawn in this comic book, but I'm going to make you look at it again, and I want you to filter that part out because what we're going to pay attention to is what really makes this story work for me. And it's not just the suspense of the story itself, but how the panel layout helps build that suspense. And it all ties into the number of panels per page. I want to show this to you so you can count them yourselves. It starts with a 5-panel page, just establishing the setting at the outset. Then we go to 7 pages, and it's just sitting and enjoying the restaurant and trying to get that service we talked about. And it finally goes up to 8 panels per page, and this slows the story down. This is when nothing is really happening and more time is passing, and then something significant happens. We have a page that's only 4 panels long in the middle of the story that doesn't even take place at the restaurant. It is significant to the story because it explains a lot of the backstory that's going on behind the scenes and it introduces our villain, the renamed Fang Gao. And then we go back to the restaurant again, and the page length increases for a little while. Towards the end of the story, just as something big is about to happen, we switch back to 4 panels as if to foreshadow that something significant is about to happen. And then on the penultimate page, when chaos erupts in the restaurant, we get another 4-panel page. And the final page, where Nelson is being overpowered, we end on this cliffhanger, and it's reduced to 3 panels. What Tom Hickey has done here is mess with our sense of time passing. A busy page takes a longer time to read and feels like more time is passing in the story, while fewer panels is a faster read and makes it feel like the story is moving faster, but at the same time lends more significance to each image that is shown to us, maybe even a little bit more gravitas to the moment that it's depicting. Tom may not have invented this trick, but no one has ever had this many pages of sequential art to play with this trick before him, at least not freed from the constraints of comic book strips horizontally across the page. And we still see this trick used in comic books to this day. Think of how many stories that you've read, comic books that all end with a cliffhanger where the last page is just one big dramatic or impactful image. And this is the same technique writ large as our 3-panel page that we just saw. All right, so I'm going to let you chew on all that for a while. I think that we're on to something really special here about this issue. So we're going to spend more time on it. Not about the features that I just talked about, mind you. We're going to do 2 spotlights in a row. We're going to do Spotlight on Spy and Spotlight on Slam Bradley. And we're going to talk about more than just the first issue stories of each of them. So get ready for some real Siegel and Schuster goodness coming up soon for us to share soon. And I'll see you then. Bye for now.